Unreliable employees like you don't deserve a place here. You're fired. We've already cleared out your desk. The words glowed on my phone screen like a neon sign in a dark alley. I blinked twice, thinking the morphine was messing with my head. But no, the message was real. Howard Klein, my boss of 8 years, had just ended my career with a text while I was lying in a hospital bed, stitches still fresh from emergency surgery. My name is Greg Murphy. I'm 47 years old, and until that moment, I was Senior Managing Director at Hallstrom Analytics, a Chicago-based financial consulting firm. 18 years I'd spent building that client base. Late nights, weekend calls, missed family dinners, all to keep our biggest accounts happy and profitable. And now, in the sterile quiet of Northwestern Memorial's recovery ward, I was being tossed aside like yesterday's newspaper. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Not from the surgery, but from the sheer audacity of it. Here I was, recovering from an appendectomy that had blindsided me during what should have been a routine Tuesday, and Howard chose this exact moment to cut me loose. My wife Laura was downstairs grabbing coffee, worried sick about the medical bills on top of Kyle's Northwestern tuition. And this is when Howard decides to play executioner. I was about to turn the phone face down when I heard a low chuckle from the bed next to me. The guy there had been wheeled in about an hour earlier, looking pale but alert, his left arm hooked to an IV. He tilted his head toward me. Bad news? His voice was gravelly, but there was something sharp underneath it. I turned to look at him through the dim hospital lighting. Older than me, maybe mid-50s, silver at the temples, and a face that looked both tired and calculating at the same time. I'd noticed his admission papers earlier when the nurse left them briefly at the foot of his bed. Alexander Porter. The name had triggered something in my memory, but the drugs had dulled my recall. Just got fired, I said, my throat raw. From a hospital bed. His eyebrow went up. Then he gave a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. That takes a special kind of cruelty. I tilted the phone toward him so he could see the message. His eyes flicked over it once, twice, then his lips curled into something between sympathy and recognition. Well, he said slowly, I thought this stay couldn't get any more interesting. The way he spoke, measured, confident, snapped something in my memory. I'd seen his photo in Crane's Chicago business. Alex Porter, CEO of Porter & Associates, the firm that had been our biggest competitor for the past decade. His company had been circling our client base for years, trying to break into the sectors we dominated. And here he was in the bed next to mine, watching my boss's betrayal unfold in real time. I lay back, heart racing, not from pain but from sudden clarity. Howard had always been paranoid about Porter poaching our talent. He constantly reminded us that loyalty was non-negotiable. He'd even accused me of being too friendly with competitors at industry conferences. And yet, in his arrogance, he'd just handed me on a silver platter to the very man he feared most. Looks like your company doesn't value you, Alex said, his eyes steady on mine. But I suspect your clients might feel differently. His words sent a chill through me. He was right. Over the past 18 years, I'd built relationships with some of the most demanding corporate clients in the Midwest. Relationships built on trust, late-night crisis calls, and countless small sacrifices. Howard thought he could simply erase me from those accounts. But he didn't understand the difference between contracts and loyalty. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. 3 weeks earlier, I was sitting in Howard's corner office, looking at financial reports for Branson Industries, one of our anchor clients. The numbers weren't pretty. Greg, we need these Q4 projections to show 8% growth, Howard said, not looking up from his laptop. I studied the data again. Howard, the actual performance was 3%. Maybe 4, if we're generous with the interpretation. Make it work. I can't fabricate numbers. Branson's CFO isn't stupid. She'll spot manipulation immediately. Howard finally looked at me, his face flushed. Then you're not leadership material. The board expects results, not excuses. This isn't about excuses. It's about fiduciary responsibility. It's about keeping clients happy and revenue flowing. I stood up. I won't falsify data, Howard. Find another way. The meeting ended badly. Howard's face had gone from flushed to white, and I could see his jaw working like he was chewing glass. But I thought that was the end of it. We'd had disagreements before. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I'm being wheeled into surgery for an emergency appendectomy, and Howard sees his opportunity. No witnesses, no HR department, just a text message designed to humiliate me when I was at my most vulnerable. Now, lying in this hospital bed next to my biggest competitor, I realized something. Howard hadn't just fired me, he'd freed me. Tell me something, Greg, Alex said, somehow knowing my name, though I hadn't introduced myself. How many major accounts did you personally manage at Hallstrom? The question caught me off guard. This was exactly the kind of information Howard would kill me for sharing. But then again, Howard had already tried to kill my career. Directly, 12 major accounts. Indirectly, I oversee relationships with maybe 25 more. And what kind of revenue do those accounts represent? I hesitated for just a moment. About 60 million annually. Alex's eyebrow arched slightly. And they trust you? I thought about the late-night calls from panicked CFOs facing deadline pressures, the quiet thanks from executives after I'd helped them navigate crises that could have cost them millions. Trust wasn't even the right word anymore. They trust me, I said firmly. Alex set down the water cup he'd been holding and leaned back against his pillows. For a long moment, he studied me like he was working out a complex equation. Finally, he spoke. Greg, I'm going to be direct with you. Porter & Associates has been trying to penetrate Hallstrom's client base for years. But what we've lacked isn't strategy or resources. It's someone like you. Someone who understands both the numbers and the people behind them. My breath caught. If you walk through our doors tomorrow, I can promise you two things. Freedom from Howard's shadow and the authority to build something of your own. Are you offering me a job? Here? In a hospital bed? He smiled slightly. Opportunities don't wait for perfect circumstances. You know that better than anyone. My mind was spinning. It felt reckless, almost surreal, but deep down I knew he was right. I'd never been just a cog in Howard's machine. I'd been the engine, and Howard had cut me loose without realizing I could power something else entirely. Still, the practical side of me, the Navy-trained part that always considered the tactical situation, started listing the problems. Howard will come after me. He'll claim non-compete violations. He'll threaten lawsuits. Alex nodded. He'll bluster, of course. Men like him always do. But tell me, where is Porter & Associates headquartered? Milwaukee. And Hallstrom? Chicago. He spread his hands. Different jurisdictions. And more importantly, courts rarely enforce non-competes when someone is fired without cause. You're free, Greg. Freer than you realize. For the first time since reading that text, I felt something other than anger. Hope, maybe. I imagined Howard's face when he realized his attempt to humiliate me had opened the door for his biggest rival. I imagined Tyler Klein, his nephew who'd been angling for my position, fumbling through client calls he didn't understand. The nurse came in then, checking our IVs and breaking the intensity of the moment. But Alex's words kept echoing in my mind long after she left. That afternoon I called Laura. Her voice was strained with worry about both my health and our finances. How are you holding up? I'll survive, I said. But Laura, something unexpected happened. You're not going to believe who's in the bed next to me. When I told her, she was quiet for a beat, then let out a low whistle. If that's not fate, I don't know what is. I smiled for the first time in days. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe it was just Howard's arrogance finally catching up with him. That night, as the ward lights dimmed and the hospital settled into its uneasy quiet, I made a list on the back of my discharge papers. Names, phone numbers, companies, people who had trusted me, depended on me. Clients who wouldn't tolerate being handed off to Tyler or some inexperienced replacement Howard might hire. By the time I put this pen down, I realized something simple and undeniable. Howard hadn't just fired me, he'd freed me, and soon he was going to regret it. The following Tuesday, I was discharged. The nurse helped me into my coat, the stiffness in my abdomen reminding me with each step that I wasn't ready for a physical fight. But my mind had never been sharper. Alex had been discharged the day before. Before leaving, he'd leaned over and said quietly, I'll have my office call you. Rest for now, but don't waste time. Opportunities have expiration dates. That sentence replayed in my head as Laura drove me home through Chicago's late February slush. Outside, the cold was bitter, cutting through my jacket, but it woke me up. I felt alive again. Not as someone discarded, but as someone about to begin something dangerous and necessary. At home, I found a small envelope taped to our front door. Inside was a note handwritten in neat script. Greg, I meant what I said. Call this number when you're ready. Underneath was a business card embossed with the Porter & Associates logo. I sat at our kitchen table, the card between my fingers while Laura heated up soup in the microwave. Part of me hesitated. Joining a direct competitor could burn bridges forever. Howard would brand me disloyal. Industry rumors would spread. But then I thought about his text, the cold finality of it. He'd already burned the bridge. I owed him nothing. That evening, after Laura and the kids had gone to bed, I dialed the number. A woman's calm voice answered. Porter & Associates. This is Patricia. I cleared my throat. This is Greg Murphy. Alex Porter told me to call. There was a pause. Then her tone shifted to something warmer. Of course, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Porter is expecting you. Can you come in Thursday? Thursday, just 3 days after being discharged from the hospital. My body still felt weak, but my pride wouldn't allow me to delay. Yes, I said, I'll be there. Thursday morning, I took the train up to Milwaukee and walked into Porter and Associates' downtown office. The lobby was all polished steel and glass, everything about it radiating quiet confidence. Patricia met me at reception, her smile professional but genuine. Mr. Porter is waiting for you. Alex was seated in a conference room overlooking Lake Michigan. He rose when I entered, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business dinner, not after sharing trauma in hospital gowns. Greg, he said warmly, I'm glad you came. I sank into the chair across from him, pulse racing despite my efforts to stay calm. I don't want to waste your time, I said. So let's be clear. I'm not here to gossip about Hallstrom. I'm here because I know my clients. They trust me. And if Howard thinks he can shuffle them off to Tyler or someone else, he's in for a rude awakening. Alex studied me for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were contract drafts, compensation figures, equity options. It was more generous than anything Howard had ever offered. But what made my throat tighten wasn't the salary. It was the title, Executive Vice President, Client Strategy. This is more than I expected, I managed. You've been underestimated for too long, Alex said simply. I don't make that mistake. I signed that afternoon. My hand trembled slightly as I wrote my name, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what it meant. The following week, I made my first calls. Carefully, quietly, I reached out to 3 clients I trusted most. I didn't try to sell them anything. I simply told them the truth, that Howard had let me go, that I was now with Porter and Associates, and that I would still be there for them if they needed me. To my surprise, none of them hesitated. If you're at Porter, we want to be at Porter, said Janet Bronson from Bronson Industries. Tyler called us last week trying to take over our account. We ended the call early. Kid didn't even know our project timelines. Another client, Tom Bradley from Midwest Manufacturing, was even more direct. Howard's lost his mind if he thinks we'll work with anyone but you. Have Porter send over a transition proposal. By the end of the week, 4 firms had formally requested contract discussions with Porter and Associates. Nothing signed yet, but the momentum had begun. Howard must have sensed something was happening. On Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in days. Against my better judgment, I answered. Greg. His voice was clipped, rushed. I hear you've been making calls. Is that true? I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Howard, you fired me. You told me I was unreliable. What did you think I'd do? Disappear? You're jeopardizing everything we built. No, Howard, I said, my tone steady. You jeopardized it when you fired the person your clients trusted most. I'm just giving them options. His breathing grew sharp, almost panicked. This is a mistake, Greg. You'll regret this. I ended the call without replying. For the first time in years, his threats didn't scare me. That weekend, I had a conversation with my son Kyle that I'll never forget. He was home from Northwestern for the weekend, and I could tell something was bothering him. Dad, he said, finding me in the garage where I was pretending to organize tools. Kids at school are asking why you got fired. What do I tell them? I set down the wrench I'd been holding and really looked at my son, 18 years old, trying to figure out how to navigate a world where his father had apparently failed. Kyle, sometimes doing the right thing looks wrong from the outside. I wouldn't falsify data for Howard, and that's why he let me go. But how do I know you made the right choice? Watch what happens to the clients I was trying to protect. You'll see. He nodded slowly, and I could see him processing it. That's when I knew, regardless of what happened with Porter and Associates, I'd made the right call. By the time I'd fully settled into Porter and Associates, 3 major clients had made the jump. Each transition felt the same, polite, professional, but decisive. These weren't betrayals. They were business decisions made by people who valued relationships over corporate politics. The first official termination letter came from Bronson Industries. Their legal team cited the key person clause in their contract and copied Porter and Associates. It wasn't emotional. It read like weather, just facts. Howard finally reached me on the phone one more time. His voice was brittle, desperate. What are you doing? You can't just steal our book of business. This is theft. You fired me, Howard. Clients are making their own choices. You think you can run to Porter and gut what we built? I'll bury you in court. Then call your lawyer, I said evenly. But they'll tell you the same thing mine told me. Relationships aren't property. You won't survive this, Greg. People remember disloyalty. Then they'll remember yours too. I hung up before he could respond. My hands shook, but not from fear. His power over me had completely evaporated. That's when I got a call I wasn't expecting. Dana Sullivan, Hallstrom's senior project manager, called me on my personal cell. Her voice was low, urgent. "Greg, I shouldn't be doing this, but you need to know. Howard's told us to forward your old client emails to Tyler. He's reissuing contracts with your name removed. And he's pushing through unauthorized billing changes to inflate the revenue numbers." My stomach dropped. "Dana, that's fraud." "I know. I've been documenting everything. I'm not protecting him. Not after what he did to you." I warned her to be careful, but inside I felt something solidify. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was desperation. 2 weeks later, Alex called me into his office with news I should have seen coming. "Howard Klein stormed our lobby this morning demanding to see you," he said with an amused smile. Security had to escort him out. He was screaming something about you being finished. I looked down at the street from Alex's window. The city looked the same, but I knew everything beneath the surface had shifted. "He's unraveling," I said. "Completely, and it's about to get worse for him." Alex was right. Word spread quickly through our industry after Howard's public meltdown. Colleagues started reaching out, asking what had really happened. I stuck to the facts. I'd been terminated without cause and was now with Porter and Associates. Nothing more, nothing less. By month's end, Bronson Industries had finalized their transition to Porter. Midwest Manufacturing's board approved our proposal, and 2 smaller firms were preparing to make the jump. Howard's voicemails grew increasingly strange, pleading 1 minute, threatening the next. I stopped listening to them. Then Dana called again with the news I'd been expecting. "Emergency board meeting yesterday." The audit team flagged those unauthorized billing changes. "They're asking how we lost 5 major accounts in 2 months. I looked out over Lake Michigan from my new office. The water was gray and choppy, but somehow peaceful. "He did this to himself," I said. "I know. Greg, be ready. He's going to try something desperate." But Howard's desperation had already passed the point of strategy. 2 days later, I got word that he'd been removed as CEO. The board cited loss of confidence in leadership and failure to protect client relationships. Tyler had resigned the same day, leaving behind a trail of confused emails nobody bothered to answer. That evening, Laura poured us 2 glasses of wine in our kitchen. She raised her glass with a thoughtful expression. "You don't look happy," she said. I swirled the wine slowly, watching the light catch in the glass. I'm not sure happy is the right word. Relief? Maybe. Howard brought this on himself, but it still feels like watching a building collapse. "You beat him, though," Laura reminded me. "He fired you at your lowest moment, and look where you are now." I nodded, but the truth was more complicated. Destroying someone else never feels like pure victory, even when they deserve it. A few months later, I was walking into our Chicago office. Yes, Porter and Associates had opened a Chicago branch with me running it, when I ran into Kyle coming out of a coffee shop near Northwestern. "Dad," he jogged over, grinning. "Guess what?" "What?" "Tom Bradley came to speak at our business ethics class. He spent half the time talking about you. About how you refused to falsify data and how all his friends in the industry respect you for it." I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was tight. "He said you're proof that doing the right thing eventually pays off, even when it costs you in the short term." We stood there on the sidewalk, my son looking at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes for months. Respect, not just for his father, but for the choices I'd made. Later that week, I was at Brooke's softball game when she struck out in the bottom of the 7th with runners on base. I could see her frustration as she walked back to the dugout, head down. After the game, I found her sitting alone on the bleachers. "Tough break," I said, sitting beside her. "I let everyone down." "Did you swing at good pitches?" "Yeah." "Did you give it your best effort?" "Yeah." "Then you didn't let anyone down." Sometimes you do everything right and still don't get the result you want. That's not failure, that's just life. She looked up at me. "Is that what happened with your job?" "In a way. I did what I thought was right, even though I knew it might cost me. Sometimes that's all you can control. Do you regret it?" I thought about our new house, smaller but paid for, about Kyle's continued respect, about being able to look myself in the mirror every morning. Not for a second. 6 months after that hospital text message, I was running Porter and Associates' Chicago office. We'd grown faster than any of us expected, thanks to the influx of former Hallstrom clients. Alex had kept his promise. He'd given me autonomy, respect, and the space to build something meaningful. For the first time in my career, I wasn't fighting to be heard. I was simply doing the work, and the results spoke louder than any boardroom politics ever could. One evening, I was working late when Patricia knocked on my office door. "Greg, there's a call for you." Someone named Howard Klein. I stared at her for a moment, then nodded. Put him through. Greg, his voice was unrecognizable, hoarse, stripped of all authority. They've ruined me. You've ruined me. I didn't speak. You could have walked away, he continued, his tone wavering between anger and despair. But you had to humiliate me. After everything I gave you, I finally answered, my voice quiet but steady. You didn't give me anything, Howard. I earned it, and you tried to take it away with a text message while I was lying in a hospital bed. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. The line was silent except for his uneven breathing. Then he said, almost to himself, maybe you're right. He hung up. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. When I think back to that hospital bed, to the text that seemed to rip the ground out from under me, I realize now it wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Howard thought he was discarding me. What he really did was set me free. The lesson I carry from all this is simple, and it's something I tell young professionals who ask for advice. Never let someone else decide your worth. Jobs, titles, companies, they can vanish in a moment. What remains is your work, your integrity, and the trust you build with people. Those are things no one can fire you from. Howard lost everything because he never understood that basic truth. I gained everything because I finally did. These days, when Kyle brings friends over to the house, I sometimes overhear them talking about their summer internships and career plans. They're worried about making the right impressions, saying the right things, playing the politics correctly. I want to tell them what I learned that day in the hospital. The right thing isn't always the easy thing, but it's always the sustainable thing. Build your career on relationships and trust, not fear and manipulation. And never ever let someone's opinion of you become your opinion of yourself. That's worth more than any salary, any title, any corner office. That's worth everything.